Well, as people on my favorite podcast, A Solid Verbal, like to say, win your clunkers. Once again, Tim Aiden from BlackSheepDiaries.com. And Pat is out right now. He's got other commitments, but got a special guest in his place, fellow Black Sheep Diaries colleague, Lando. Lando, feel free to introduce yourself if you want to the masses.
Good to be here, Tim. Good to be here, Tim. I've enjoyed watching you, Tim and Pat, so glad to step in here.
Well, we're glad you're able to, join us for this special occasion, and hopefully you'll get other chances to appear on the show at some point if Pat or I are not available. But anyway, get down to the game itself. As you know, Penn State got themselves yet another victory. This time on the road at Northwestern. 41-13 is your final, but final score doesn't quite tell the whole story of just how much of a clunker this felt like for at least the first three and a half quarters. Defense, I'll say, was probably, they were balling out for pretty much the entire game, save for a couple of drives. But the offense, different story. Drew Aller just probably his worst performance of the season. And it's not like he threw any interceptions or turned it over in any way. Although I think he did have a strip fumble at one point, but probably maybe an even worse performance in his game against Illinois, if you ask me. But again, still ended up throwing for a touchdown. Still, I believe he was pushed in for a touchdown. The old Jalen Hurts patented tush push that the Eagles love to use. And overall took care of the ball, but it just seemed like accuracy was off. Maybe he and his receivers were not quite in sync. And really, it wasn't until maybe midway for the fourth quarter when Penn State's up, they already have 3 touchdowns. The game's basically over at this point. And then they finally decide to take some downfield shots. When I'm thinking, where the hell was this the entire game? I really wish they had been doing that a little bit sooner, even though, they were able to kind of drive their way down and ultimately assert their will on Northwestern. It just would have been maybe less painful if they would have taken some of these downfield shots earlier in the game. But like I said, win your clunkers. You're 5-0 going into the bye week. Then you got UMass coming out of the bye week before you head to Columbus for, an absolutely pivotal game. So there's time to get things cleaned up. But Lando, just maybe some thoughts on your end. How did you see this game today?
Well, coming into the game, everyone talking about Northwestern having the conference's worst run defense statistically. And I mean, they did have almost 200 yards on the ground, but less than 4 yards a carry is not going to cut it against, if you can't push around the worst defense, run defense in the conference, I don't know how you expect to run against Ohio State and Michigan. So that's a big concern for me. The other huge concern, certainly I agree with you, Tim, about the receivers, or outside of Condrey Lambert-Smith, really left a lot to be desired. I think Drew's his accuracy got a little bit better in the second half, but I mean, he was missing lots of throws in the first half for sure. And you're right about that strip sack. But the second and third and longs for me is the most frustrating. As a Giants fan, I'm also used to my NFL team giving up second and third and longs, but there was at least 3 conversions. I think one almost conversion that ended up resulting in a failed fourth down. But I think maybe the defense should skip to fourth down and they stop them, because that's really that's a huge concern. The other thing that coming into the game, they were the only team so far to not have a turnover, and they got that out of the way really, really early. I know both of us were saying before the game that it'd be great to just get out of the way, and they did with Singleton's fumble, but there's a lot of concerns. This is not a perfect team. I always get nervous when Penn State gets a lot of hype in the preseason, especially about their offensive line, which is better than it's been, but I don't think it's as good as the press has been making it sound. But the defensive line really dominated the game. Zariah Fisher, Zane Durant, Denida Sutton, Vanover, and Adisa Isaac all had at least a half a sack, if not a full sack. And, Keziah Izzard was fantastic, getting through, the line constantly. So I think that's a positive. And then the other positive for me on other offensive defense was Trey Potts. I think he definitely needs to get more playing time. Going into the season, I thought, and I think most of us thought he was going to be a third down back or a kind of a spelling Singleton or Allen, but based on his performance today, he definitely needs to get more playing time. So some positives, certainly. The win is the most positive, but there's a lot of stuff to clean up, like you said.
Absolutely. It's weird that we're talking about a 41-13 victory and we're talking about a lot to clean up with, but you make some good points. That running game, still, I think at this point, I kind of have to ring the alarm bell on this one. This is the worst rushing defense in the Big Ten, and you're still just putting together these minuscule 3-4 yard runs. Frankly, I was telling you, I think I was saying this in the Slack channel, but Nick Singleton just looks a few steps slower than he did last year. I feel like last year Singleton would have hit some of those holes really quickly and just taken off for a huge game, maybe taken one to the house. But this year he's slower to get to the hole. He doesn't end up even on some of those like runs to the sidelines, like the stretch plays or the screen passes, he just doesn't quite hit the acceleration as quickly like he did last year. I just don't know if I don't know what's going on. Maybe he's more dinged up than we think he is, or just put on too much weight in the off season to bulk up, but in turn sacrifice speed. Kind of not unlike Derek Williams between his freshman and sophomore year, back when he was playing. I remember this really fast kid as a freshman. You could just use him on end arounds. You can throw bombs to him or whatever. But then sophomore year, he just looked a few steps slower. Didn't quite have that top-notch speed, but he did get it back his junior year. I think he slimmed down a bit. So I don't know. Maybe in the offseason, that's something they'll have to play around with. But unfortunately, just doesn't seem like the same Nick Singleton that he was a year ago. It pains me to say that. And Katron Allen, it seems like I didn't even realize it, but I guess he left the game at some point with an undisclosed injury. Hopefully it's nothing serious. He was standing around there in the sidelines, so it's not like he had to be taken to the locker room or anything. So maybe hopefully he's just a bit banged up and just, the week off will help him heal up. But like I said, Trey Potts, man, he stepped up in a big way. And, maybe it's just the fact that he has really fresh legs from not having played much this season, but he looked like the fastest running back Penn State has right now. Just how shifty he was and, and hitting the hole and just, that was a lovely middle screen pass he caught from Bo Prabula to help Penn State front door cover late in the game. But yeah, like I said, he really needs to get more playing time, especially if Katron's going to be out for a little bit. Definitely going to be seeing a lot more of him. But even if not, I think he's definitely he showed why he deserved to get the rock a bit more after today. And it speaks volumes to the depth Jaywan Sider, running backs coach, has built up in that room. Normally, I remember last year just kind of, in the back of my mind, thinking to myself, if Katron or Nick goes down, the next person up is Tank Smith, essentially. So I think Kevon Lee was hurt, and then he just wasn't really playing, and then it ended up transferring. So, so it's really just nice to have that third option in Potts, who, like I said, looked really solid, probably like our best back out there today, if I'm being frank. And that's not to take away from what Nick Singleton accomplished. He had 2 total touchdowns himself, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. But yeah, it's concerning. I don't know. And I think part of it has to do with the offensive line, though, as well. They haven't been as good as advertised. Not terrible by any means, but they're not just not quite living up to the billing. I feel like we maybe jinxed it by talking them up in the offseason. I think it's better when we just assume they're going to be mediocre and then they surprise us by being really good. I don't know. But yeah, they took a step back from last week when I thought they did a fine job holding off Iowa's defensive front. But I don't know. Maybe some of this is just also you chalk it up to, you're playing at Northwestern. And yes, I know they had that brilliant comeback win last week against Minnesota. And we're playing with a little more confidence than usual. But still, it's almost like in the first half, at least, the offense came in there and just thought they could just walk out in the field and just push them around and just meet like almost no resistance. And that certainly wasn't the case. And, hats off to Northwestern. David Braun's done a good job rallying the troops there with all the stuff that hit the fans since July with Pat Fitzgerald's firing in the wake of all the hazing allegations. So I still think they might have maybe a win or two in them. Yeah, going in, especially playing the Big Ten West. I feel like they can nab another team or two from there. So we'll see. I doubt he ends up getting a full-time job, but never know in these situations. But overall, it was very, it was a win. It was ended up being a comfortable win in the end. So can't complain too much. But like I said, it's also a lot that needs to get better before they take on Ohio State. I guess before we continue on, I just want to say hello to everyone who's watching us. Texas Buckeye 1953, Matthew Hazarik, and all those who are watching us on blackshoediaries.com right now, where we've posted the link to the show. So hope you're enjoying this. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the Voice of College Football channel here on Mark Rogers TV. And just a friendly reminder, Mark himself will have his weekly call-in show tonight at 11:30 Eastern time. So want to talk more about today's game with him? There you go. Check out his show and give him a call, voice your opinion. And blackshoediaries.com, of course, Lando and I help with football coverage on there. I'll have my position grades post up tomorrow and my turning point post on Monday. Lando, what posts do you typically do up on there?
So I follow the Nittany Lions in the NFL. So you'll see that on Tuesday and Wednesday. I also push out the bowl projections from a couple different sites, and then tomorrow I'll also have the poll, the rankings post as well. So we'll see if they drop or move up depending on the rest of the top 25 in the AP and coaches polls.
Yeah, we'll see. I can't imagine even if they drop, it's by one spot. It's hard to see them getting punished for covering the way they did.
And that's the key there, Tim. I think that the touchdown from Bo to Potts, I think that because most of the country you would assume would just be looking at the score and didn't really watch the game.
Oh, Penn State crushed them.
Right. So 28-point game. And I think, so I think it's safe that they'll probably stay in that number 6 spot, but we'll have to see. I just wanted to say one thing to any Nicholas Singleton stands. He's still a great back. I mean, I think the fact that we're kind of nitpicking about his explosive ability really speaks to how good of a back he is. So Nick Singleton operating at what we think is 70 to 80% of his ability is still pretty good. But I wanted to kind of go on what you're saying with Trey Potts and the running back depth. I mean, not many teams have 3 backs that have nearly 1,000 or have 1,000 yards, career-wise, cumulatively. That's a pretty nice embarrassment of riches there. And I also wanted to mention, if I didn't already, defensively, Kobe King really continues. He had a great start to the year. Today he had 4 tackles and a sack. Really, early on, the sack too, he really stayed with that play. He didn't initially get to the quarterback, but he kind of retraced his steps and chased him down from behind a little bit. So I'm really impressed with him. Honestly, I know this is going to be a hot take, but he's probably been the best king on defense, but that's not because Kalen hasn't made plays. It's because no one's throwing to him. So
nobody throws to Kalen.
Right. So that's not Kalen's fault, but that's just the honest truth. I think right now, I think Kobe is more impressive, but that is definitely, I'm not trying to have any hot takes or anything. Also, we didn't really talk about special teams yet. Falcons,
no, we have not.
Falcons and
special teams
and Nwosu. Gabe and Falcons, those two parts of the game are solid. That's pretty much it. Nothing really explosive on the return game, and obviously that fumble on the kickoff. Special teams are a concern as well, and especially when you get down to those games with Ohio State and Michigan, when you assume they're going to be tight games. Special teams can really make a difference, so that's another concern. In addition to the offensive line and receivers.
Yeah, obviously return game. Singleton had the fumble early on. Thankfully, the defense held him to 3, and that kind of made a difference down the line because, if they convert that into a touchdown, for one, they're probably ahead at halftime instead of tied, and also later in the game, when Penn State, when Northwestern was driving, they were at 1st and goal, trying to cut a 17-point deficit down to 10 potentially. If they had converted that turnover into a touchdown, we're talking it's like 27-17 game, and they're looking to make it like a 3-point game and really put the pressure on Penn State again. But so that's where those little, forcing them to settle for 3 there, and then also forcing them to settle for 3 at that juncture. And we can kind of maybe segue into some key, key stops defensively. But, I think it was what was it? There was one possession in the third quarter where it's like I said, 3rd and long, which is ironically our biggest kryptonite. And that's not because the pass coverage sucks. It's because, we're blitzing so many people. We're down at the pressure so much, basically. And there's no one really to watch over who's spying on the quarterback. It's basically the quarterback's able to evade the pressure. He's got tons of real estate in front of him to run to and pick up a 1st down. And so that's what it appeared Northwestern had done, but it turns out on review, he came up just short. And then they tried the whole tush push thing themselves and then realized, mathletes versus athletes. That's not quite going to work out. I can't take credit.
Oh, that's not fair.
Friend of mine texted me that. So shout out Shane, but he, but yeah, it was kind of a realization Northwestern doesn't quite have the guys to pull off those kinds of sneaks. And that ended up giving Penn State the ball, I think near Northwestern's 30. And, Penn State was able to capitalize with a field goal. And basically they turned a 1-score game to a 2-score game. And, from there, they never really let up. Northwestern never got close ever again in the game. And I remember there was also, I think Penn State's up, or I think it was the next possession.
Mm-hmm.
Look this up. Very next possession. Yeah, fake punt sneak, which came up about a yard or 2 shy. It was a good. I'll say it was a good call by Northwestern. You had nothing to lose at that point. You're playing with house money. Yeah, I'm sure David Braun could feel the game slipping away from him at that point. So, why not try something that maybe you catch the defense off guard and they. You pick up a fresh set of downs, breathe some life into your team, but it came up short. That's when Penn State ultimately scores the touchdown, which effectively put the game on ice, even though Northwestern, made it a 2-score game again with a field goal. But by that point, you just felt like the offense had at least one more touchdown drive in them. So I wasn't too concerned at that point. And plus their quarterback at that point, Brent Bryant, had been knocked out of the game. So you really didn't have much faith that Brennan Sullivan was going to engineer a 14-point comeback in the 4th quarter.
I do think it's hard to swallow getting the ball twice around the 35 and getting 10 points and not 14. I think that's really that's you can't waste chances like that again against the tougher competition in the conference. But I mean, you mentioned the fourth down. I mean, I know they mentioned it on the TV broadcast that the Northwestern blocker just kind of let Zion Tracy go. I mean, if Zion Tracy doesn't make that tackle, that's a first down, and then the drive continues, and who knows what what happens after that. And you mentioned the Zane Durant sack that really was one of the turning points, kind of sealed the deal sort of thing, and then it also knocked out Bryant, as you mentioned. So I mean, yeah, certainly the young defensive players, I think, for Penn State certainly stepped up. The Northwestern got a little desperate, I think, like you were saying, that, and some of the play calls and the latter stages of the game were a little questionable. But I mean, a win's a win, and it's sloppy, but like you said at the top, you gotta win the clunkers, and Penn State did that. So,
Yeah, another thing I wanted to talk about, not sure, but just the passing game. I also talk about Drew not looking as sharpest, but what also concerned just the lack of downfield shots wasn't until really like I said, fourth quarter, we're up 3 scores when the game's effectively out of reach. And then we're having Drew air it out downfield. Would have been nice to have taken some of these shots when the game was a little more in doubt, and really just put, even if it's incomplete, at least you're putting Northwestern's defense on notice and telling them, hey, you need to respect this, guys. Or we're going to burn you at one of them.
I mean, and you even saw I can't remember what stage of the game it was. I think it was the second quarter, maybe. They threw like a medium length pass and to Lambert Smith, and he got down the field. And then the next couple of plays, there was way more space for the running game, and even that medium passing game just opened the playbook a little bit. Like you're saying, I mean, that was the first deep ball the entire season, let alone the game. I mean, that to me is mind-boggling that they have not thrown the ball deep once. And given all the little dink and dunks and running games, you would think that these short runs and screens and slants and things like that would set up a deep shot here and there. But one true deep ball that Cephas just missed. It was a great throw, and then I know they threw another 25-ish yard throw that I posted in the Slack chat. I wondered if Drew was having had some vendetta against the end zone photographers because two of them took quite a stumble. But yeah, that's definitely a frustration. I know for a lot of Penn State fans is that the lack of deep shots, because that really does open up the offensive play calling.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a point where I was myself, what, they can just leave Mike Yurcich and Evanston with, if that's all they're going to be doing with the play calling. I mean, this is supposed to be Franklin's guy, and I know his offenses can be prolific. I saw it at Oklahoma State, especially when he had Mason Rudolph slinging it around. So, and this is like his prize recruit. I mean, it's just baffling at this point in the season. He's not giving Drew the green light to air it out. And I wonder, before Iowa, it seemed like they were playing to take away the deep ball, and Aller did a great job of just taking what the defense is giving them, because the middle of the field, the sidelines were open all night long, and he was able to just dink and dunk us down the field. That was fine. But, this is not Iowa. I mean, I'm sorry. This is, you got to be able to trust your receivers can win some one-on-one matchups here or get open. And I don't know if it's also just a problem with receivers outside of Keandre Lambert-Smith not being able to get open, or because I think Drew had, for the most part, he had plenty of time to take a shot. Maybe there's only a couple times I can think of where he might have gotten pressured, but it's just, yeah, at least we finally saw some shots later in the game, but I would like to see those early on at the beginning of the game. And especially when you go to Columbus, I mean, you're not going to come out of the victory if you don't take some downfield shots earlier on in the game. Like, you can't wait until maybe you're behind a bit or to start doing such things. But that's a development to watch going forward. But I consider me disappointed with the offensive play calling up to this point in the season. Even though it's been, like I said, they've been effective enough. They've been able to, put together long drives and finish them in the end zone and just wear teams down. But, you're going to have to mix it up a bit more if you're going to, beat the top dogs in your division like Ohio State and Michigan. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight Anthony's comment here. Wasn't impressed that coach, people are making a big deal of how quiet Northwestern's crowd could be if coaches telling players that the team's going to come out flat, and they did. Yeah, I guess I understood why, they turned down the music or didn't play any music, but I mean, it's kind of I don't know. I feel like maybe Franklin was making a little too much about how quiet it would be. I mean, yeah, it's not going to be loud like a whiteout, or it's not going to be like going to Ohio State or some other team with a loud opposing crowd. But, there's fans in the stands. Those students especially will be jumping and screaming the whole game. So you have to expect some kind of noise. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think he has a tendency to, I don't know, maybe like overthink things a little bit like this. I think he may have overthought it with the whole crowd noise and not pumping in music during practice this week. So, but that's water under the bridge as far as I'm concerned. Michael, Penn State's overrated, so is Ohio State. Let's go Terps.
Michael was a Maryland fan, it seems like. So
yeah. Well,
yeah, November 4th will be an interesting test, I think. In College Park, I'll be up in the booth for that, or the box for that one. That's going to be a challenge, that's for sure. I mean, Maryland's certainly improved.
They have. I imagine there's a good chance they could be 7-1 when Penn State visits, 7-1 and ranked. I figure they'll probably lose to Ohio State on the road, but the other games, I mean, they have Indiana today at home. They have, I know they play Illinois as well, and then I forget who else they play. I think they have one more game. I think it's at Northwestern actually before they play us. So, they could definitely win those three. And Ohio State's only game I see them losing really. So you could definitely see them 7-1 and ranked. But I'll tell you, as long as James Franklin's the head coach, Penn State will never get caught overlooking Maryland. That's just like one game. It's like kind of personal for Franklin because he used to coach there, and we don't have to get into all that. But also just Penn State recruits Maryland in the D.C. area so heavily. I mean, there's so many players in the team that come from that area, and their families are all going to be there. I mean, it's a big homecoming type game for a good chunk of the roster. So you can bet they're going to be fired up to play in their, near their hometowns, near with their families watching in the stands. I still like Penn State to get the win there, and because of I think they match up better in the trenches, especially defense line versus offensive line. But Maryland certainly can, as they've shown, they got some dudes on offense, so you gotta definitely respect them there. And so that's a game obviously we'll talk about more as we get closer to that. That's still a little over a month away.
It's a month away, right? Yeah.
So let's see how Maryland gets through its October slate, because yes, September Maryland is very much a thing. I heard a stat the other day, I forget what, but something like Maryland is 7-28 in the month of November since joining the Big Ten almost 10 years ago. So that's yeah. All right, Michael's still talking smack in the chat.
Well, I see we have a comment about
Michigan's dragging
Michigan,
Nebraska right
yeah.
now, apparently.
And it's
Yeah,
interesting
it's 14-zip first quarter. It just
because a lot of people thought that Nebraska was going to keep that close. I was not one of those people. I thought Michigan was just going to roll them. So, Michigan continues for me to be at the top. I mean, I know a lot of pundits were saying they thought Penn State was kind of moving past Michigan or at least past Ohio State. And right now, I mean, until the Kings are dethroned, Penn State's not above them in my mind, and Michigan clearly is showing that they're where they belong at this point.
Buckeyes in the bye week prepping for PSU. Yeah, I mean, well, who they play? I know they have Maryland next weekend coming out of the bye week, and that'll be during Penn State's bye week. Haven't pulled. Let me actually pull up a schedule to see who Ohio State plays the week before Penn State. Looks like that is. Let's load up. Oh, at Purdue. Okay, so they get Maryland at home, Purdue on the road before Penn State. Yeah, I mean, Maryland again. It's a team. They can't just sleepwalk into and expect they're going to blow them away. But I would think they're going to be focused on them. And Purdue, they haven't shown themselves to be that good this year. So
Rondell Moore is not coming on the field.
No, Rondell Moore's not. No, Rondell Moore is not coming through that door. It's just they're going for a bit of a transition right now with Ryan Walters running the show there. So, but yeah, I guess we can take a quick look around the rest of college football. I were talking about before we started the show, USC and Colorado, which I guess he was going to run away with it early on, but Colorado fought back, ended up only losing, and the final being 48-41 USC. So, good on Coach Prime's crew for clawing back, not getting embarrassed like they did last week in Oregon. We'll see how much longer Fox and ESPN continue to ride the Coach Prime train. But I think that's a team that could probably sneak out 6 wins, get to a bowl game, which would be a major, major accomplishment for year one under Prime.
Absolutely.
So, see if they pulled off. Speaking of Maryland, they're up 14-3 on Indiana early on. Not surprised there. Indiana, just not a good team. They should have lost to Akron last week if Akron didn't have such a college kickers moment, missing a head-on field goal from 30 yards or so. I mean, it was almost like an extra point, and he just shanked it. And I feel bad for Joe Moorhead, especially head coach of Akron. Looked like he was going to get his biggest win as Akron coach, and that didn't quite happen.
Shout out to Kentucky as well. They have 3 straight wins against Florida for, I think I saw the first time since the 50s. So I mean,
that's 3 straight.
Yeah, wow. Will Levis University. So
Will Levis, even though Will Levis is gone, we'll still call it Will Levis U. What was the final in that?
33-14, I believe.
I think it was 23-0 at one point when I checked. So kind of Kentucky's 5-0. Okay, good on them. Clemson took care of Syracuse. That's a game that a lot of people thought maybe had upset potential with the Cuse, and especially with Clemson looking shaky early on this season, having lost 2 games, including last week against Florida State. But, little old Clemson proving the haters wrong, coming out and getting a 31-14 win in the Carrier Dome. Yeah, I know it's called something else now, but I still call it Carrier Dome. Sue me. Auburn up 10-0 on Georgia.
But that's
you want to talk about winning clunkers, Lando? Georgia's got a clunker going on in Jordan-Hare Stadium right now. It's 10-0 Auburn early on. But, that's a team where we saw them go down 14-3 at home at the half to South Carolina, and then just rip the Gamecocks' hearts out in the second half. So could very much see a similar thing playing out today. So
and Auburn with the former Michigan State Peyton Thorne. So nice Big Ten.
yes, indeed. Let's take a look at some comments here actually before we wrap it up. Mike here says my upsets are Duke and Kansas. So Duke plays Notre Dame tonight at home. I actually think I have Duke pulling the upset too, Mike. Let's see. Kansas is playing Texas. I believe it's in Lawrence. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Kansas is good. I think Texas's offense though is going to be too much for that Kansas defense. I think it could be a shootout for a bit, but I think Texas ultimately pulls away and gets the win at Kansas. But yeah, I am high on Duke right now, and maybe Notre Dame will bring him down a few notches tonight. But I'm sticking with the Dukies. It's funny how as much as I may not like their basketball team, their football team's like this lovable underdog to me. So kind of fun. Oh, Ian, I believe our Australian pal Ian. I think he was on the messaging us last week on here. Welcome back, Ian. Hi from Moz. Love college football. Amazing grand final of Aussie rules. Collingwood being Brisbane. 100,000 fan. All right. Oh, Mason Cox. I believe I've heard of this guy. I think 60 Minutes did a segment on him. He's this guy from Texas. He actually went to Oklahoma State. I think he played basketball there, and somehow ended up in Australia and playing Aussie rules football. But dude's like close to 7 foot, so it's ideal for catching long passes and he's a very, very athletic dude. I think I remember watching a 60 Minutes thing on him, but his accent's funny because it's like a mix of like Texas and Aussie accents. He's been living there for so long now. Never heard anything like it, but yeah, Ian, really curious. Did you go to you can chime in the chat, Ian, but did you go to a school here in the States that had a big time college football team, or did you just somehow discover it in the land down under via the internet and just been following ever since? But yeah, thanks for tuning back in. Appreciate your viewership. Let's see. Clemson needs to beat Notre Dame. I mean, if they want to gain some national respect back, I would tend to agree. I mean, obviously lose Notre Dame. That's their third loss on the year, and they're essentially becoming an afterthought at that point. So I agree with that. Mike asked, was kept a score of Penn State Northwestern so close? As we talked earlier, just offense, kind of offensive ineptitude. Drew Hour looking out of sync, the blocking not being what it should be, and especially in the run game, and just Singleton not looking like you'd expect him to, or at least not the explosive player you'd like to see him be. It's not that he was ineffective. He had a couple touchdowns, but he's capable of a lot more. So there's that. And of course, like I said, just Hour just looking out of sync, and I think we're still kind of waiting for another, like a number 2 receiver to step up beside Keandre Lambert-Smith. I mean, Dante Cephas seems like maybe he can be that guy. Had a couple catches, and I know Drew threw a bomb to him later in the game, but maybe it could have been a touchdown if he had a little more real estate in front of him. But, Trey Wallace, hopefully he can get back soon enough. Maybe after the bye week, he'll really be available again. But he's been questionable now the last few weeks, and supposedly he was going to be good to play last week, but that never happened. So we'll see what happens there.
Realistically, I think that Liam Clifford's probably the most reliable second option below Lambert Smith. I mean, you would love it to be Cephas, but or Trey Wallace, but he's had several drops this year that have been certainly catchable balls. Like we said earlier, the near touchdown. I think he could have. It was a tough to get his feet down, but it was a beautiful throw. So, that's certainly that's a huge concern. And as Mike said in the chat there, Notre Dame didn't have a receiver step up for Hartman. It's super crucial for Penn State to have a receiver step up. Because if you only have one receiver that's productive and reliable, all you have to do is double that receiver and that shuts down the passing game. The other alternative is to get the tight ends more involved, which I know all of us at BSD were hoping for, and didn't see too much of it today. But I think Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren definitely have the ability to really make a significant impact in the passing game. Warren had a really nice catch and run later in the game that really showed his athleticism. So I think that's something to watch for. But certainly, Mini Clifford, as I call him, really is becoming the clutch.
Little Cliff,
clutch guy. So.
Oh, Ian is our answer. Australians take a lot more notice of all sports around the world than Americans do. Point taken, Ian. Yes. Although I will say with fair soccer, I think that's really like English Premier League and especially has really taken off in the States, I feel, in the last decade or so, especially ever since NBC got the rights to the EPL. It just seems it's kind of become something you see a lot in just mainstream American sports coverage. So we're taking some notice, but yeah, I agree with you. And we don't notice quite as much around the world as you guys down under do. Darth Duck says, fear the quack. I'm guessing Oregon must be beating up on whoever they're playing right now. I think Lando's pulling that up.
Yeah. They don't play until 6:30, so I guess.
Okay.
I think maybe Darth Duck is pre-gaming.
That's possible.
You got 2 hours before they take on Stanford.
Okay, well I think they have nothing to fear with Stanford. They should wax them.
Well, and he's certainly right. Oregon and Washington are, and they have really three top teams in that conference, which certainly I think most people sort of count out the Pac-12, but in the last season of the real Pac-12, but Oregon, Washington, and USC are all really solid. I know Utah just lost their first game on Friday, yesterday, but you got Oregon State's in the top 25. Utah will probably still be in the top 25. USC, Oregon, unless Stanford beats them, I suppose. And then, Arizona could be ranked if they were to beat Washington. That conference, I think you could argue that they are stronger than the Big Ten top to bottom anyway.
Yeah, Pac-12 is having quite the swan song, and it's really a shame. Even though I'm looking forward to the whiteout against USC next year, it's still a shame to see that conference collapse the way it did, and it just goes back to just years of incompetence from the guys who were previously running the conference. Just the failure to get the Pac-12 network was an abject disaster. The exact opposite of what the Big Ten networks ended up being. If that goes more successfully, I think there's no announcement of USC, UCLA joining the conference. You don't have other teams following suit. Pac-12 continues to roar down the train tracks, but unfortunately, it's coming to a close. But it's good to see in their swan song year that they got teams like USC, Oregon, Washington all doing well. It's going to make the Big Ten very interesting going forward. I'm just glad they're expanding the playoff to 12 teams. I'll say that much about the expansion stuff. So thank goodness, because everyone's been beating up on each other with what we're bringing in for next year. So, yes, thank you, Mike. Appreciate the kind words. We do try to do our best here on the Penn State postgame show. We're in the voice of college football. Lando, do you got any final thoughts, words before we call it a day?
Just the 1-0 was accomplished. Moving on to I think the bye is much needed at this point to certainly try to figure out the offense, rest up the defense. Hopefully, Catron will get some rest this coming week, and then I would argue too maybe rest them against UMass. Overall defensive line dominant. Win's a win. Chalk it up. Move on to next week.
Yes, indeed. 1-0, undefeated going into the bye. They basically now got basically got 3 weeks to get ready for Ohio State. So you got the bye week, you got basically a glorified scrimmage with UMass, and then got Ohio State. So we'll see how it plays out. For Tim and Lando, thanks for tuning in here in the Penn State post-game show, the voice of college football, MarkRogersTV. And thanks to those of you who are watching us on blackshoediaries.com. Your one-stop shop for all Penn State sports coverage year-round. We got wrestling, basketball, hockey season coming up shortly. So, we will have plenty of coverage of that going on and throughout the winter. So, we're not done once football season is done. That's for sure. But Lando, thanks so much for stepping in. And perhaps we'll be back on here at some point again whenever Pat and I aren't available. So,
love to. My pleasure, Tim.
Yep. All right. Have a good one, everybody.